and the touching moment between the leader and the senior senator from Tennessee, which was moving to all of us. Now, Senator Alexander and I have not always agreed, but what an amazing and capable legislator and true statesman he has been. He's been the middle of things for much of his 18 years in the Senate. That's because he's not some ideologue who stood alone in his corner. It's because he's someone who's been always willing and insistent on reaching across the aisle, on hearing another senator's perspective, on searching for common ground, however narrow it may be. He searches to do the right thing. I remember when we did the immigration bill, and there was a lot of pressure on Senator Alexander to vote against it. And I watched him wrestle with it and turn and churn. And I sort of knew in my heart he would do the right thing, in my judgment at least, and vote for that bill, and he did, at some real political consequence to himself. And that's who he was and is, a man of principle. We often would talk in the Senate gym, almost every morning for a long period of time. I don't go to the Senate gym post-COVID. And more often than not, we found each other on opposite sides of the Senate gym. We helped open up the amendment process on child care legislation. Together, we led the Rules Committee for a number of years. And we come from very different backgrounds, but I'll never forget the weekend that Iris and I spent with Honey and Lamar at Blackberry Farms. And it was a beautiful weekend for us that we will always, always cherish and remember. Given the opportunity to put a stamp on presidential inauguration, Lamar and I said, whoever is in the majority, we didn't know, we'd give each other time to speak, and it served us both well. This is the kind of person he has been, someone who is willing to reach out, someone who is willing to see the other side, and someone, above all, in tumultuous and very difficult times for all of us, is a man of principle and conscience. Senator Alexander will leave this chamber with a legacy that every senator would be proud of. I wish him and his family the very best. Now, on a few other words, since I want to make a few remarks about we have a going and we have a coming, and our coming is of a new senator who will be installed today, and that is Captain Mark Kelly, who will be sworn in as the next senator from Arizona. It may not be the role he expected for himself earlier in his life as a U.S. Navy captain and then an astronaut aboard the International Space Station. As Mark likes to say, his wife Gabby was already the member of the family in Congress. But tragedy upended both their lives and changed so many of their plans. Everyone continues to be inspired by Gabby's recovery, by Mark's devotion, and the courage it took for their family to re-enter public life and public service. But that's who Mark Kelly is, a devoted and honorable man, and we're delighted to welcome him to the Senate Democratic Caucus and the wider Senate family. So, a fond adieu to my friend Lamar, a fond welcome to my new friend, Mark Kelly. And Mr. President, I have some more remarks, more on the topics, but I think I'll defer those with unanimous consent, that I could talk about those later so we can get right to Senator Alexander's remarks at the 10:30 scheduled time.
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will proceed to executive session to resume consideration of the following nominations. Support
of somebody who we all admire and respect. Now, back to regular Senate business. I'd like to conclude my remarks from earlier this morning on the Senate business. But first, I want to mention that I just met with another of President-elect Biden's exceptionally qualified slate of cabinet nominees over video conference, and that was Alejandro Mayorkas for the Department of Homeland Security. No one exemplifies the hope and promise of America better than Ali, an immigrant from Cuba who has risen to the highest echelons of public service in his adopted country. We had an excellent conversation about how to restore integrity and trust at DHS as how to make this a department that is not just anti-immigrant, but relishes the fact that immigrants are so important to the future of America. Now, I will note that in previous administrations, the Secretary of Homeland Security has been confirmed by the Senate on Inauguration Day for President Obama and for President Trump. The Senate should continue the tradition and quickly confirm Ali Mayorkas for the third time so that he can get to work on day one of the Biden administration. Now, on Senate business. Before the end of the year, the Senate has three major priorities: fund the government, pass the annual defense bill, and deliver another round of significant COVID relief. The appropriators from both sides of the aisle continue to have good discussions, and I hope on the funding of the government, a final agreement can be announced soon. Now, the other two priorities, unfortunately, are a bit murkier. Yesterday, President Trump issued over Twitter a renewed threat on the annual defense bill. Previously, the president threatened to veto this important legislation over a provision to rename military installations named after Confederate traitors. Now, President Trump has issued a veto threat by tweet over a policy concerning social media companies, Section 230, which is in neither version of the NDAA already passed by both houses of Congress. President Trump must have realized that vetoing a pay raise for our troops in order to defend the honor of Confederate traitors wasn't the best message to send. So he's found a new complaint. After 4 years of ignoring the president's most vitriolic, conspiracy-fueled, and absurd comments on social media, I wonder if our Republican colleagues will say that they didn't see this particular tweet. The truth is, Section 230 may actually need some reform, but that's a serious undertaking that should be done in a regular order and can be left for another day. And it's certainly not an acceptable reason to veto the annual defense bill, which includes policies to keep our military prepared, well-resourced, and equipped to do a difficult and vital job. Nonetheless, it's silly season at the White House. The president seems intent on filling each of his remaining days in office with petulance, grievance, self-interest. The president's reportedly asking his staff about whether he can President's reportedly asking his staff whether he can issue preemptive pardons for himself, his family members, Rudy Giuliani. There's a simple answer: no. No, Mr. President, that would be a gross abuse of the presidential pardon authority. But I have a more important question. Just how long are our Republican colleagues going to indulge the president in this nonsense? Many of our Republican colleagues gave the president space to contest the validity of our elections, poisoning Americans' faith in our democracy. Now he's threatening to veto a pay raise for our troops and considering preemptively pardoning the entire Trump family. When are our Republican colleagues in the Senate going to say enough already? At the very least, with respect to the defense bill, Senate Republicans ought to find the courage to ignore the president's 11th-hour ramblings and pass the NDAA. And now regarding another COVID bill, we seem to be caught in a familiar pattern. We all know that successfully passing legislation through Congress means that a bill must get through the Democratic House and get Democratic votes in the Senate. Passing a law takes a measure of bipartisanship and compromise. That's why Speaker Pelosi and I sent the Republican leader a new offer on a COVID bill. It was an effort to jumpstart serious negotiations. But yesterday, Leader McConnell announced that rather than respond to our offer or the bipartisan offer of the so-called Gang of Eight, that he will pursue another partisan proposal before the end of the year. He said he was going to talk to the Republican leader in the House, the Republican president, and that's it. Not a word with Democrats. From early reports in the press, the latest Republican offer will be even more insufficient than the previous two attempts. So insufficient that, according to one press report, a Republican senator said it was offensive, his words, to struggling Americans for the Republican majority to focus on another messaging bill. Apparently, the latest Republican proposal will not include another dime of unemployment assistance because, according to the Republican whip, it was likely something the president wouldn't sign. Let's be clear. The latest Republican offer on COVID will include immunity for corporations who put their workers at risk for COVID, but not a dime for workers who lost their job because of the pandemic. The Republican leader should not waste the Senate's time on another inadequate partisan proposal, and instead should sit down with Democrats to begin a true bipartisan effort to quickly meet the needs of the country. I yield the floor.
Order, all post-cloture time has expired. The question is